Memorandum. Now this is the last part. This is the last topic that we are going to cover. What is memorandum? Now when we say memorandum is actually a Latin word to be able to understand better. Memorandum is a Latin word, and actually memorandum is memorandum is plural, and memo is a short form to it, and it's a written message. Memorandum has to do with written message. It is a note that is used for any kind of internal communication within an organization. So obviously we say that memos. अब memos की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो memos are always we need to understand that what is the difference between a letter and a memo. Memo is always internal और हमेशा organization के अंदर होता है. It is circulated within. It is never circulated outside any organization. And ज़्यादातर memo is usually very brief. It is, it's a very short kind of it's a one page basically. At the most, a memo could be a very, it conveys a very quick information, and it could be just a one page document, and it could be single spaced, and it could be in paragraphs. That is how a memo is usually written. And and then memos are usually passed within the employees in an organization to inform the employees about certain policies, day-to-day business. It's a day-to-day letter, that is passed within the employees, and it could do with certain policies, procedures, any information that needs to be communicated within the company. And obviously, it can be used to request any kind of action that needs to be taken, right? Any report, any progress, any reminder. There could be umpteen reasons, like there could be so many reasons that a memorandum or a memo is passed, and sharing of any information, any news, any instructions, any guidance, any announcements, any updates, any request, any responses, anything for that matter, any decision, any policies. So memorandum is like a word which means to assist the memory, right? So, and it is never sent outside, of course, and the subject is usually under discussion, and it's very short, and it's also very friendly. It is not a very formal note. It is usually sent in a very friendly way. And yes, then it is always, we can say that it is official, right? It is not unofficial, but it is official because, and it is used in the business world all over the world. Right? In every organization we have memos. That you have to understand. The layout. Now let us understand what could be the possible layout of a memo. So when we talk about memos, usually, we have to write down the title in the middle of the page. Then we have to mention to whom, so you have to mention to, and then a colon is given, and then we write down the name of the person, to whomsoever the memo is being sent to, and it could be one name, it could be many names. Then from, so from and then colon, and then from whomsoever, whosoever is sending the memo. Then the subject needs to be mentioned, whatever the subject could be, varied subject, and then the date also has to be mentioned. So these are the 5 parts that we are talking about. The last part is actually, first is to, then we have the from, then we have the subject, then we have the date, and then the last part gives the description. It describes, why, the reason, the purpose. So for example, this is just, of course, my brother and I, here, the purpose is that my brother, and it reads as that this memo has been sent to Mrs. Ali Supervisor Hussain, shop bookkeeper, retirement part. Subject is retirement party, and date is May 20th, 2009. My brother and I will be able to attend Mr. Khan's retirement party on May 20th. We will bring potato salad. Now see, this is what this memo says, that there will be, the subject is retirement party, and then the reply is that my brother and I will be able to come, so and whosoever the person concerned, and that particular person will bring potato salad. So it is a brief, kind of a statement, and it always tells the purpose. So this is the general template of memo, that we have the to, from, subject, date, and purpose is always mentioned. Basic organizational plan. What is the basic organizational plan of a memo, if we are talking about memo here? Because memo is an everyday letter that is being shared within an organization, and there could be so many reasons for it. So the direct plan, actually here it means it states the direct points. Obviously everything is very, very direct, nothing is hidden, nothing is closed. Whatever needs to be told, whatever needs to be mentioned is mentioned. It is directed in clear words, and it moves to, and the details are always there. Obviously the purpose here is presenting any routine, any everyday information that needs to be passed on, any news that needs to be relayed or to be told to the members working in an organization. So this is basically the purpose of a direct plan. Then there could be an indirect plan, means any appeal has to be made, or any evidences that needs to be taken, any conclusions that needs to be drawn upon, and to be an organization needs to come to a particular conclusion. So the purpose here is to kind of arouse interest before any action that needs to be taken, anything that the company is going to come up with. Then before that, prior to that, appeals are usually made, and some evidences are usually taken, and some conclusions are drawn, and then only the company can come up with certain actions. So then we have indirect plan, and lastly is combination of the two. So it could be direct, it could be indirect. It combines both the persuasions and information, and of course here combination purpose could be like if any bad news, if it's any kind of news can be bad in many ways, like if an employee needs to be terminated, for example. So it's not a good news, it's a bad news. So but of course a memo can be sent in and can be called, and that particular employee can be called upon, that so and so reason. Or reasons could be also many, if any employee has done any theft, for example, then a memo can be sent and the employee can be called upon, and obviously information can be taken in, can be decisions has to be taken in. So there could be a combination of the two. Then some types of memo. Now we have 3 types of memo basically. These are the main 3 types that in an organization basically. So first we have the persuasive memo. So persuasive memo basically has to do to make people believe into something. Persuasion का मतलब होता है to make people, to convince people of certain thing, to make them believe into something, or rather to ask them something, And then we have the directive memo, and lastly we have the technical memo. Persuasive memo is basically constantly to keep the readers, feeling in mind. So whenever there's a persuasive memo which is being sent, so whosoever that it is being sent to, whoever is the participant, that the feeling of that participant is kept in mind, and the emotions are kept in mind, and then the memo is written likewise. So the memo and the person has to be convinced, because obviously memos are being sent to call upon that, and how much how much logic has to be used, and how much appeal, and what sort of emotions that you need to write in, the way that it is presented to the party is very important, right? Because persuasion is actually to call upon some kind of answers that is needed. So feelings of the other person has to be kept in mind when we talk about persuasive memos. Then directive memos. Directive memos is a it states a policy or a procedure that we want the reader or any co-worker to follow. Supposedly any worker is not following certain policies, certain procedures, certain rules, certain regulations, rules can be broken. So the length of the memo is very important, and of course, and obviously whatever the procedure is going to be taken, that needs to be explained. So of course what directive memo actually means, any course of action that needs to be taken against an employee, any established or any official way, this is like obviously very, very official. And so for example, a standard procedure for informing new employees about conditions of work, so could be a directive memo. So like the members can be informed like how the working conditions will be, in the coming time. So the members can be explained and can be told through these memos. So obviously it is nothing but dissemination of informations, and information can be many. Then we have the technical memo. So now what is a technical memo? Technical memo is basically it's a short statement, it's a short piece, it's very concise, and there's always a presentation of results, and there's always logical progression is there. And so obviously here this could be it can be not just no longer four single spaced pages. It could be like, and this could be a long one. Technical memos could not necessarily be a one page. It could run into 4 pages. It can have facts, it could have figures, and it usually communicates, short reports where a formal, technical report is not warranted. It applies to solution to a question. Basically, technical memo is written when, a solution needs to be, taken up for any question. There could be some difficulties, and answers, a company might not be getting certain answers, so obviously we need solutions, so obviously memos are sent in. Then it could be also that any assignments that involves any technical analysis. So if any technical analysis has to be made, then a memo can be sent in. So that is called the technical memo, and the number of pages from a normal memo to a technical memo could be plus 3 pages. Normal memo is usually 1 page, and technical memo could be more than 1 page. Function and importance of memorandums here that we can see: to provide information. It could be like, any meeting that can come up. So obviously points needs to be discussed. So memorandums can be sent in. To issue an instruction. Any instruction, staff members can be requested to attend any orientation program, any seminars, any conference, any meeting. Time is usually mentioned to convey any policy decision, to offer any kind of suggestions, like, in-house trainings if taking place, then memos can be sent in to all the cadres, to all the team members. Cadres here means the team members. To record or report on any kind of agreement during any meeting, So any new, if for example in a meeting, supposedly new LCD projectors are needed, then of course, memos can be, this is basically the function of the memo, that meetings can, hold in. And so during the meetings, so once the meetings are on, then it can be decided upon as to how many, LCD projectors can be bought in. So memos usually are sent. It's an everyday, function. So everyday memos are being sent, and the function is it's so many, because it can be informative, it could be instructional, it could be to do with decision making, it can also do with, suggestions giving, or any kind of report, any kind of agreement. So what is the importance? It is an internal communication tools, very, very important. Why? Because obviously it runs within the employees, within the departments, and everybody is informed about the certain instructions, because memo holds, all informations and all instructions. Then it gives the clarity. It is a formal piece of information. It is concise and, very precise. It reduces all kind of misunderstandings, all kind of miscommunications. Very efficient, piece of information that can be disseminated through memos. All policies and procedures and decisions are updated through memos, or it's a kind of a written record is there. It has accountability, and it can be tracked, and obviously it can be referred to for the progress of any projects, any decision that the company has taken. And of course, memos also, specify tasks and responsibilities and deadlines to all the members. So, and it is very, very inexpensive also. It's not very expensive, because just a piece of paper that, and nothing else, and no kind of, obviously, no finances are involved here. So it's very, very inexpensive. Then essentials of, what is a good business letter and what is a memo. So it has to be very, very simple, in writing, and because obviously it has to be very, very plain. and saying exactly what one means. So it should not have any additional information. The clarity is very, very important. Unnecessary words should not be there. Very, very format has to be there, paragraphs has to be there, margins should be there, spacings has to be there, single spaced, it is usually single spaced, and all the font should be very neat. So Times Roman is the best font, and the letter should be very well organized and very well formatted, because it's a letter. Memo is basically a letter, but letter within an organization. So basically, if we understand that clarity and brevity is the goal of any organization, and clarity and brevity is the goal of a letter and a memo, so that's why the words should be very less. Like instead of 32 words or syllables, one can just use for 14 to probably 15 words can be taken up. So the average length should not be obviously of a memo should not go to more than 1 to 2 pages. Standard and neutral language has to be there. Like very difficult words and jargons and some new phrases and foreign phrases and technical terms should not be used. No slangs should be used. So the writer's attitude has to be kept in mind, to whomsoever that it is being sent to. That is important. The customers and clients are very, very important, because memos are basically being written to a very specific reader, to a very specific participant. So one has to go down to the level of the participant, because it's a letter of correspondence. So that has to be kept in mind. The attitude has to be kept in mind once the memos are drafted. Then tone and sincerity, very, very important again, because the writer's tone and sincerity reflects the purpose and the personality, because obviously you are speaking of yourself. So it is your personality that comes through the memo. So one has to be very, very polite, very respectful, and the tone has to be very, very sincere. Then passive verbs, like confidence, means it has to emanate confidence. And how it emanates confidence means, because passive verbs are weak, as I said, and they convey withdrawal in the writer's subconscious mind, and active verbs are dynamic verbs. So letters have to be always written in active voice. All imperatives, all the commands, all the sentences always should be written in active voice, because active voice is very natural and it conveys the information which is in process. So that is important, because in active voice, in active verbs, we say that the subject is the performer, is the doer. The subject of the verb performs, and he is the doer, she is the doer. And in the passive voice, the subject is the receiver. So obviously it should be always in the active verb or the active voice. Then directness, obviously any long sentences should be avoided. It should be very, very direct. It should be very desirable. Nothing should be very abrupt. It should not come to an end abruptly. It should be to the point and to the purpose. And then comes the period. Then enthusiasm. The letter, whatever the memo holds, whatever the memo has, the reader should feel the writer is genuinely interested, because it's a very genuine piece of writing. And nothing, like being said like, believe me. These kind of words should not be used, that I'm really interested in solving it. Instead, the writer has to choose words that shows interest in the reader. That yes, I'm actually, you can just omit the word believe me, and rather you can just write, I'm really interested in solving your problem. So this speaks of the purpose. This is very direct. This is very as much as is necessary. So unnecessary words should not be taken up. Then humanity, very important again, because business letters are generally written in a very stiff, formal and very mechanical manner. So that has to be done away with, and the tone has to be personal. It should not be a very heavy tone, right? And also, along with the tone being very, there should be some emotions, there should be some warmth, and the feeling of speaking to another living being. It's like you're speaking to somebody also as human as you. So there could be personal pronouns like we and I and you and he and she. So obviously it gives a personal touch to all the business letters. So obviously, and the tone has to be right, because the tone we say should be business-like, but business-like with certain emotions. Of course, because it's a business correspondence, right? But it has to have certain emotions. It should be simple, it should be friendly. Even if one has to criticize, even one has to apologize, it has to be done very carefully. It should be very complimenting, it should be very pleasing, so that all problems can be resolved and all solutions can be formed and taken up at the right time. So emphasis is that whether it's a letter, ideas has to be placed, and it has to be placed in order, and it has its importance. An idea has to be stated all in the beginning, and of course it can be divided into paragraphs. Memos can be divided into paragraphs, and the rule is to place first the main idea has to come first, and then obviously the position of the idea reflects the importance of the idea. That is important. Emphasis has to be, and of course if emphasis has to be given to whatever, by the positioning, the emphasis is very much reflected, and so there should not be any repetitions, and punctuations and all mechanical devices should be avoided. And of course one should not use, also to add on here, that one should not use any creative sentences, and all commas and all full stops should be inside the closing quotation marks, and one should also select the syntax, and that minimizes punctuation, so less of punctuations we should use. And with that we come to the end of this topic, and let me just conclude and say that the information here which is is presented, all informations via notices, via MONs, whether the minutes, whether the agendas, that needs to be presented very clearly. It has a format. The format is very, very structured, and it should be very easily followed, and the purpose, the audience, the problems, all the issues has to be addressed along with very specific informations and with very specific details. Thank you.